Welcome, deeply curious listeners, to another compelling deep dive. Today, we're not just scratching the surface. We're going to peel back the layers on a truly fundamental question. What is the hidden DNA of enduring success? Why do some individuals, some movements, and some organizations not just survive, but truly inspire, create unwavering loyalty, and thrive through almost any challenge? We've all seen it, right? Companies with seemingly infinite resources, overflowing with talent, yet they falter. And then there are others, sometimes starting with far less, who just, well, they transcend. What's their secret? The insights we've pulled together for this deep dive, drawn largely from the groundbreaking work of Simon Sinek and others who champion purpose-driven leadership, they kind of challenge a lot of our assumptions about success. They argue that pursuing right answers will always steer us wrong, eventually. That true, lasting impact comes from those who fundamentally start with why. It's a powerful, almost counterintuitive premise in a world obsessed with what and how. Our mission today is to uncover how this simple yet profound idea, this why, serves as the bedrock for inspiration, loyalty, and long-term triumph, whether you're trying to build a global movement or simply, live a more fulfilling life.
And what's truly fascinating here, and often overlooked, is that this isn't just some corporate strategy or a leadership philosophy for the boardroom. Not at all. This core framework, often referred to as the golden circle, actually helps us understand why we do what we do on a much deeper, more human level. It applies just as much to us as individuals seeking personal fulfillment as it does to huge multinational corporations or even entire social justice movements. At its very core, it's about understanding the deep-seated motivations that drive us and crucially, drive others too.
Okay, so let's unpack this golden circle idea. Imagine it as like three concentric rings. The outermost ring, the one everyone can easily see and talk about, is the what. This is where most people, and most companies, typically start their communication. It's what you do, what products you sell, what services you offer, or maybe what your job function is. We make computers. I'm an accountant. It's simple, it's clear, but as we'll quickly discover, it's often profoundly incomplete. Moving inward, the next ring is the how. This is about your differentiating value propositions. It's the unique processes you use, your supposed secret sauce, how you do what you do that makes you different or, in theory, better than the competition. Maybe it's we offer the highest quality product at the best price, or we have a proprietary cutting-edge manufacturing process. Many assume these how-tos are what truly motivate people, what wins over customers. They're a step beyond just the what, certainly, but still not the foundational core, still not the heart of it.
You're absolutely right. And here's where the true breakthrough lies. The innermost ring, the very heart of the golden circle, the WHY. This is the purpose, the cause, the deep-seated belief. It's the fundamental reason something exists at all. Why do you get out of bed in the morning to do what you do? Why does your company even come to work every day? This WHY is, paradoxically, rarely articulated, yet the insights we've studied argue it's the single most crucial element for inspiring loyalty and action. The key distinction is this. While most organizations communicate from the outside in, they tell you what they do, sometimes how W, but almost never WHY truly inspired companies and leaders. They flip that script entirely. They think at and communicate from the inside out. They start with WHY. Always.
Apple Inc. stands as the perfect, almost textbook example of this. Think about it. Their success isn't just about having objectively superior products, the what. Their gadgets can be expensive, and honestly, they're not always better than competitors in every single technical specification. Sometimes they're not. What made Apple stand out, what made people literally camp out in line for 6 hours just to get an iPhone, wasn't merely the device itself. It was their crystal clear, almost audacious why, to challenge the status quo and think different. That was the feeling. Remember their iconic advertising. When Apple introduced the iPod, they didn't just rattle off gigabytes and battery life. Nah, they offered 1,000 songs in your pocket. That wasn't merely a feature. It communicated why it mattered to you, the consumer, how it would fundamentally change your life, how you experience music. It tapped into a deeper belief about freedom and personal expression. That's why people queued up. That's why they felt such a strong, almost irrational loyalty. It just felt right.
And that's the powerful synergy, that clear correlation between what they do and why they do it. That makes Apple authentic and fosters that kind of, fervent loyalty. Every product they create, every message they put out works to consistently demonstrate that underlying WHY. Now contrast that with a company like Dell. For many years, Dell was perceived almost solely as a computer company,
Right.
just boxes. When they tried to branch out into small electronics, things like PDAs or MP3 players, they largely failed. Even if the products were technically competent, it just didn't feel right to buy those items from Dell. It felt off. Their WHY had blurred, becoming simply, we make computers. And when your why is just about what you make, you become interchangeable, just another commodity.
It's a classic trap, isn't it? So many successful companies, over time, seem to lose their initial spark, their distinct sense of purpose. They might start with a powerful WHY, maybe driven by a visionary founder. They grow, they achieve incredible success, and then somewhere along the line, they kind of forget why they started in the first place. They begin defining themselves solely by what they do. We make software. We sell coffee. And when that happens, the entire game changes. The currency of competition shifts dramatically.
Absolutely. When that core WHY is lost or becomes vague, price, quality, service, and features become the primary and often the only differentiators. It's all you've got left, really. Companies then resort to what are essentially manipulations to drive sales, gain market share, or attract new talent. Now, these manipulations work, let's be clear, that's why they're so prevalent. But as we've seen time and again, they come with significant, often devastating long-term trade-offs. Take pricing, for example. Companies often hesitate to start a price war, but they jump in because deep discounts do move product. You see companies like GM back in the mid-2000s offering cashback incentives of up to, $7,000? And for a while, yeah, sales spiked.
But the research clearly shows the long-term cost of that strategy is immense. Those kinds of incentives dramatically erode profit margins, putting companies like GM in a really precarious financial position as they were by 2007. It's a short-term boost that doesn't build loyalty. Instead, it kind of trains customers to wait for the next deal. Another incredibly powerful manipulator is fear. Think back to those impactful anti-drug campaigns from the 1980s, like, this is your brain on drugs. Intense stuff. Fear is deeply ingrained in our biology, our primal drive to survive. When fear is triggered, facts often become secondary. It's why something like terrorism can be so crippling psychologically. It's an effective short-term motivator, yes, but it fundamentally doesn't build lasting loyalty or trust. You don't exactly love the brand that scares you into buying something.
Then you have aspirational messages, which tempt us with something desirable. Every January, for instance, gym memberships typically see a 12% rise as people chase New Year's resolutions for a healthier, better life. The message is aspirational. Become the best version of yourself. And that's appealing, right? While these messages can certainly spur initial behavior, they often require immense personal discipline for lasting change, and they don't necessarily build loyalty to the brand itself. You typically don't stick with a gym because of the brand. You stick with it for your personal goal. And speaking of external motivators, peer pressure is another common one. Millions of satisfied customers can't be wrong, or 9 out of 10 experts prefer this product. Dr. Seuss's Sneetches, obsessing over stars on their bellies just to fit in, perfectly illustrates this human desire for belonging. We often believe a majority or experts know more than we do, but again, it's a superficial motivator, not really a foundation for deep loyalty.
And what about innovation or novelty for its own sake? We see companies constantly pushing out new features, a better mousetrap, simply for the sake of being new or different. Remember the Motorola RAZR? It was widely hailed as a monumental innovation when it launched. Sleek, incredibly thin, undeniably new. Very cool at the time.
Yeah, I remember that phone. Yet less than 4 years later, Motorola's CEO was forced out and the RAZR's stock plummeted. Why? Because competitors quickly surpassed its features. It wasn't built on anything lasting. It was innovation for innovation's sake, a product pushed out without being driven by a clear, inspiring WHY. True innovation, as Apple consistently demonstrates, arises from a purpose-driven desire to advance a cause, not just from adding more features or having, as one commentator put it, like 32 different kinds of toothpaste like Colgate, without truly solving a deeper underlying need for the customer.
So the bottom line is manipulations are effective for one-off transactions. If a police department offers a reward for tips about a crime, they just want the information, right? Not a lasting relationship with the tipster. That's perfectly valid for that specific context. But for a business aiming for long-term growth and true impact, what's the actual cost of relying on these tactics? What's the damage?
The research is pretty clear on this. These tactics cost more over time, provide only short-term gains, and they significantly increase stress for both the buyer and the seller. It's a treadmill. It creates an almost palpable addiction to short-term results, fostering an economy built on quick fixes. Think about companies that design rebate programs where they literally measure customer failure to claim savings. That's not exactly customer-centric, is it? It's not about genuinely serving the customer. It's about tactical gain, a kind of psychological manipulation. This is worlds apart from the kind loyalty Southwest Airlines experienced post 9/11, when customers, out of a profound sense of shared togetherness and support for the airline, actually sent checks, like real money, to the company. That's loyalty you simply cannot buy with a discount. It has to be earned.
And this brings us to the fascinating biology behind true connection and lasting loyalty. The research delves deeply into how our brains actually work. It explains that our decision-making, our gut feelings, our sense of trust, these are largely controlled by the limbic brain. This ancient part of the brain is responsible for things like trust, loyalty, and empathy, but crucially, it doesn't control language. This is precisely why sometimes when you make a big decision, it just feels right, and you can't quite articulate why in rational terms. You just know.
This point is absolutely crucial because it means traditional market research or polls asking people why they chose a product are often, well, pretty unreliable. People will typically rationalize a choice that was already made emotionally. They make up a story afterwards. So winning hearts and minds isn't just a cliche. It means appealing to that limbic, feeling part of the brain first. The rational details, the whats and the how yous, then become the logical proof of the WHY rather than the initial driver of the decision. If you truly believe what a company believes, if their Why resonates with you on that gut level, then you find their product compelling and you're less likely to focus solely on the facts and features you're already bought in.
We came across a great analogy for making decisions that are truly consistent with your WHY, the celery test. It's beautifully simple. If your overarching WHY, your guiding principle, is health and vitality, and you're faced with a choice at the grocery store checkout between, say, celery and M&Ms, you choose the celery. You might indulge in M&Ms sometimes. Of course, we're all human, but you inherently know it's an indulgence, a deviation not aligned with your core purpose.
Exactly. And this kind of discipline, this adherence to your WHY is what ensures authenticity. Take Volkswagen, for instance. Their name literally means people's car. Their original WHY was about providing affordable, quality transportation for the average person. That was the whole point. So when they tried to introduce the Phaeton, a luxury sedan, it failed miserably despite being a brilliantly engineered, high-quality car. It just didn't fit. It was simply inconsistent with what people felt Volkswagen stood for. It didn't pass the celery test for their brand, and it didn't resonate with their loyal customers. It just didn't feel right buying a fancy luxury car from VW.
So if that's the foundation for building authenticity and loyalty, what does it truly mean for leadership in an organization? The research puts it beautifully. The core responsibility of true leaders is to create what's called a circle of safety. This is an environment where people feel genuinely valued, deeply cared for, and protected from the external dangers, the threats outside the organization itself, like competitors or market shifts.
Right. Within the circle of safety, people feel secure enough to exchange information freely, to communicate without fear of reprisal, to innovate and take risks without being terrified of failure, and to ultimately become incredibly resilient. We encountered a powerful military analogy that really drives this home. The story of a pilot nicknamed Johnny Bravo risking his life, putting himself directly in harm's way to protect ground troops who were pinned down. That kind of selfless service isn't born out of orders. It springs from profound trust and the deep sense of safety within that group. He knew they'd do the same for him. Think also of the Marine Corps eating ritual. The most junior Marines eat first, and the most senior officers eat last. It's a powerful, tangible symbol of leaders placing the needs of others above their own, a profound act of care and leadership demonstrated daily.
And this idea of a circle of safety isn't just some fluffy feel-good concept. It's actually deeply rooted in our biology, influenced by 5 key social chemicals: endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, and cortisol. Let's break down what each of these does because they play a massive role in how we behave and how organizations function or dysfunction. First, endorphins. These are basically our natural painkillers released during physical exertion or stress. They mask physical pain, helping us persevere. Think of a runner's high, or that feeling you get after pushing through an all-nighter to meet a big project deadline with your team. What's interesting is that shared hardship, like staying up until 3 a.m. with your team, can actually increase oxytocin, forging deeper bonds among those who went through it together. There's a connection there. Next up is dopamine. This is the chemical that fuels our drive for goal achievement, giving us that satisfying thrill of accomplishment. It's what you feel when you hit a sales target, get a promotion, check something off your to-do list, or even when you receive a like on social media. It's all about making progress, and it feels incredibly good.
But here's the critical flip side. Corporate cultures can become almost addicted to dopamine, to that constant hit of achievement. Incentive programs often reward performance purely on numbers, without regard for how those goals are met. It just becomes about hitting the target. We saw this in the infamous Wells Fargo scandal, where intense pressure for quarterly numbers led to systemic unethical behavior like creating millions of fake customer accounts just to meet quotas. Or consider Milan, the pharmaceutical company that hiked EpiPen prices by 500%, mainly to boost earnings per share, lining executives' pockets with huge bonuses linked to those numbers. This kind of culture incentivizes what's called ethical fading, where individuals or organizations engage in unethical behavior while somehow convincing themselves they haven't compromised their principles precisely because the bad behavior is being rewarded. The dopamine hit overrides the ethics.
Then we have serotonin. This chemical is responsible for feelings of pride and status. It plays a significant role in strengthening the relationships between leaders and their teams, between followers and those they look up to. Think about the genuine pride you feel when your team achieves something great, or that profound sense of accountability you feel to those who have supported you and put their trust in you. It's a feeling of belonging and respect.
Serotonin really highlights that we feel accountable to people, not to abstract numbers on a spreadsheet. In a truly healthy system, leadership status isn't about demanding obedience or having a fancy title. It's earned by serving those in your charge. It's about putting yourself at risk for your people, showing them you have their back, and that you're willing to take responsibility when things go wrong. That's what earns respect, and that serotonin boost for everyone involved.
And crucial for building the circle of safety is oxytocin, often lovingly called the love chemical. This is the chemical primarily responsible for forming bonds of trust and loyalty. It's released through physical contact, like a handshake or a hug, acts of generosity, genuine empathy, and perhaps surprisingly, through shared struggle or shared positive experiences.
This is precisely why face-to-face meetings, especially for critical discussions or building relationships, remain so vital. Trust built through screens and virtual interactions, while convenient, just isn't the same depth. It doesn't trigger oxytocin in the same way. Research has shown that human groups function best at around 150 people, often called Dunbar's number, because that's roughly the maximum number of individuals with whom we can maintain stable, trusting relationships based on real interaction. It's why even massive online communities, like those who attend conferences like Blog World for digital creators, still gather thousands of people in person annually. Nothing truly replaces that real human connection for building deep trust. Oxytocin is indispensable for fostering cooperation, improving our overall health, and even increasing longevity. Studies consistently show that people in strong, trusting relationships tend to live longer, healthier lives. It literally keeps us alive longer.
Finally, we come to cortisol. This is our primary stress chemical, and critically, it inhibits the release of oxytocin. They work against each other. Cortisol floods our system when we experience fear, chronic uncertainty, or a profound lack of control, when we feel unsafe.
So in weak circles of safety, where office politics thrive, where there's a constant fear of layoffs, or where leadership is unpredictable and maybe even hostile, cortisol levels are chronically high. This environment makes people selfish, less cooperative, and intensely focused on self-preservation. Survival mode kicks in. Think about the culture at Merrill Lynch under CEO Stanley O'Neill, where an atmosphere of uncertainty and ruthless internal competition led to a culture of every person for themselves, ultimately contributing to its near collapse. This is why when leadership fails to create that sense of safety, people inevitably hunker down and act out of pure self-interest, not for the good of the team or the organization as a whole. It's a biological imperative.
But there are powerful examples of leaders who actively prioritize cultivating trust and fostering these positive chemical environments. Bob Chapman at Barry Wimler offers a fantastic case study. He acquired a company called Hasten Sandiecker, where employees literally worked behind a chain-link fence, feeling, fearful and deeply disengaged, like prisoners. Chapman, in a symbolic and deeply meaningful gesture, literally took the fence down. He trusted his employees, he prioritized their well-being, and he genuinely cared for them. He treated them like family. The result? Revenue shot up from $55 million to $95 million, and internal theft virtually disappeared. Employees felt truly cared for, and they responded with unparalleled dedication and loyalty. Or consider the incredible story of the Taj Hotel during the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. During that horrific event, staff members didn't just evacuate, they actively risked their lives. Some even formed human shields to protect guests. This wasn't driven by a bonus structure or some policy manual. It was because the hotel's culture had deeply ingrained a profound value for guests, genuinely rewarding and recognizing putting guest interests above all else. It was their WHY in action, even under fire.
And at 3M, innovation isn't just the result of smart individuals working in isolation. It's built into their culture of collaboration and open sharing. It's expected. Over 80% of their patents have multiple inventors, which is a clear sign of what they call innovation from interaction. They don't hoard ideas, they share them freely because their people feel inherently safe, supported, and trusted. Similarly, Jeff and Charlie Kim at NextJump implemented a radical lifetime employment policy. Instead of firing underperformers, they focus on intensive coaching and development, creating a culture where employees feel they're working for something their mothers and fathers would be proud of. This builds profound, almost familial loyalty. And Southwest Airlines, historically one of the most profitable airlines, truly lives its people-first belief. They genuinely care for their employees, who in turn deliver exceptional care for their customers. It's a truly self-reinforcing circle of loyalty and success driven by that core belief.
Now, let's flip that coin. What happens when trust and integrity are lacking within an organization or even within society? The research we explored brings up the Chilling-Milgram experiment. This was where participants were willing to inflict what they believed to be painful electric shocks on strangers, simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to continue. This highlighted how abstraction, physical distance, or viewing people as mere numbers can enable what we might call inhuman behavior by distancing us from the real human impact of our actions.
This has direct, unsettling parallels to modern business, unfortunately. In large corporations, difficult decisions like mass layoffs often occur when people become mere numbers on a spreadsheet. We need to cut headcount by 10%. Laying off 4,000 employees, for example, loses its tangible human impact for those making the decision, especially if they're far removed from the front lines. There is often no real empathy because the decision makers are abstractly removed from the suffering. This numerical abstraction, much like Milgram's physical distance, can make us capable of harm we might otherwise balk at if we had to do it face to face. The contrast between Bank of America's CEO proclaiming a right to make a profit amidst public backlash for fees versus Ralph Lauren's transparent, humble communication during a product crisis is stark. Integrity, as we understand it, is consistency between your words, your deeds, and your intentions. Hypocrisy or lying, the sources show, profoundly erodes trust. It's corrosive.
We even see this playing out in politics, which is a crucial insight for understanding societal dynamics. The research references Newt Gingrich's influence on Washington, D.C. back in the 90s. Traditionally, most members of Congress lived in D.C. with their families, which naturally fostered relationships, even friendships, and critically, trust across party lines. They saw each other as people. Gingrich actively encouraged members to spend the majority of their time back in their home districts, often for fundraising, reducing time spent together in D.C. Now, members fly in, work an intense short week focused on party strategy, and then leave. This drastic reduction in physical time together, reducing social interaction, has literally eroded trust between politicians, contributing significantly to the severe polarization and gridlock we witness today.
It's a biological issue, not just a political one. Without the repeated release of oxytocin from sustained social interaction, genuine trust simply cannot form or be maintained effectively. You need that face time. When there's no trust, everything devolves into a transaction, a finite game to win at all costs to beat the other side. And this leads directly to what's termed ethical fading. Think again of Wells Fargo, where intense pressure for quarterly financial performance fueled by dopamine-driven incentives led to systemic unethical behavior, or Mylan's 500% EpiPen price hike. These cultures, driven by a finite mindset, ended up rewarding bad behavior, making it somehow seem ethical or at least justifiable in the minds of those perpetrating it, because the focus shifted entirely from purpose to profit at any cost. The numbers became the only reality.
All of this brings us to a fundamental concept for truly enduring success and navigating the complexities of life and business: the infinite game. This idea is truly profound and maybe shifts how you see everything. It describes a game played by both known and unknown players, with no agreed-upon rules that can't change, an infinite time horizon, and crucially, no ultimate winning moment. The objective, quite simply, is to keep playing, to perpetuate the game.
This stands in stark contrast to finite games, which have clear players, agreed-upon rules, and a defined end with a clear winner. Think of a football game. Clear teams, established rules, a ticking clock, and a winner at the end. Simple. But life itself, business, social movements, relationships, these are all infinite games. There's no winning marriage or winning friendship. The goal is to continue. We saw a powerful comparison highlighted in our research. Microsoft versus Apple at an education summit years ago. Microsoft presenters were largely focused on beating Apple, their finite competitor. That was the goal. But at Apple's Parallel Summit, 100% of presenters focused on helping teachers teach and students learn, which is a clear, inspiring, infinite cause, a totally different orientation.
Apple's infinite mindset allowed them to think fundamentally beyond the box, beyond just the competition. When Microsoft was meticulously refining their Zune music player to compete with the iPod, Apple wasn't just trying to make a marginally better iPod to beat the Zune, they released the iPhone. The iPhone didn't just improve on existing phones, it fundamentally redefined the entire smartphone category and effectively rendered both the iPod and the Zune virtually obsolete overnight. They were playing to advance a cause, to innovate on behalf of their users, not just to outdo a rival. This infinite perspective, as the research highlights, opens paths for innovation that companies stuck in a finite mindset simply can't even perceive. They're looking at the wrong map.
And the true engine, the driving force of this infinite game is what's called a just cause. This isn't just a mission statement. It's the driving force for all infinite players. It's a vision that is clear, idealistic, ultimately unachievable, deeply inclusive, and always service-oriented. It's a vision that inspires continuous progress, something you never fully attain, but you strive for ceaselessly, generation after generation.
The ultimate example of an idealistic and unachievable just cause is perhaps America's founding principle. All men are created equal and endowed with unalienable rights. Now, initially, let's be honest, this was limited in its application primarily to white, landowning Protestant men. But the profound beauty of an unachievable ideal is that it inspires continuous pursuit, continuous stretching. Over centuries, that ideal has expanded, often through great struggle. The Civil War ending slavery, women's suffrage gaining the vote in 1920, the Civil Rights Acts protecting African Americans in the 60s, and the 2015 Supreme Court ruling extending marriage protections to gay couples. It's a perpetual journey toward a grander, more inclusive vision, never fully realized, always striving.
And a true just cause is, by its very nature, inclusive. It's for anyone who believes in it, anyone who wants to contribute, regardless of their background or identity. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights movement beautifully exemplifies this. Almost a quarter of the attendees at the 1963 March on Washington were white. It wasn't just for one group. It was a shared belief about a better, more just America, a cause for all who believed, not just one specific demographic. That's the power of inclusivity in a just cause.
And it absolutely has to be service-oriented, focused on the benefit of others, not just the organization itself or its shareholders. Take Sweetgreen, the popular salad company. Their mission is to inspire healthier communities by connecting people to real food. This powerful WHY drives them to source locally, to build sustainable practices, and it naturally aligns them with customers who also believe in supporting local farms and healthy eating. It's a shared cause that transcends simply selling salads for profit.
And this kind of deeply rooted just cause makes an organization incredibly durable and resilient, truly able to withstand profound change and even crisis. Consider the incredible story of Nikolai Vavilov's seed bank in Russia. Decades before the brutal Leningrad siege in World War II, driven by a powerful cause to end hunger and prevent future ecological disasters, Vavilov painstakingly collected seeds from over 6,000 types of crops from all over the world. A monumental effort. During the 900-day siege, with literally 1 million people starving to death around them, his dedicated team protected the seed bank, the culmination of a lifetime of work. It survived untouched, even as the scientists themselves starved. His WHY was so profound, so future-focused, it created a reserve of life that endured unimaginable hardship, waiting for a future generation to benefit. That's infinite thinking.
Similarly, Victorinox, the maker of the original Swiss Army knife, demonstrates this kind of infinite thinking. They explicitly state they don't think in quarters, they think in generations. It's baked into their culture. They wisely built up significant cash reserves over decades, understanding that difficult times are inevitable in an infinite game. After 9/11, when airport security measures understandably devastated their knife sales, which were like 95% of their business at the time, their infinite mindset and financial resilience allowed them to pivot and diversify. They moved into travel gear, watches, and fragrances. Today, knives are only about 35% of their revenue, and they are a much stronger, more resilient company, precisely because they thought beyond the next quarter, focused on the long game of serving people.
Unfortunately, many organizations fall for what are essentially false causes, which simply don't sustain an infinite game. They sound good, but they lack the depth. Things like moonshots are good examples. These are inspiring, finite goals within the larger infinite game, but they have an expiration date. JFK's goal to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade was a brilliant moonshot, incredibly motivating. But once achieved, that specific source of inspiration naturally wanes. You need the overarching just cause to continue. Or statements like being the best, which you often see in corporate vision statements, like Garmin's example mentioned in the research. These are egocentric, inward-focused statements that don't connect with deeper purpose for customers or employees. They're about beating someone else, a finite goal, not serving a lasting cause.
And then there's the deceptive simplicity of simply pursuing growth, focusing solely on metrics like market share, profit, or revenue growth above all else. The research highlighted how Walmart, after the passing of its visionary founder Sam Walton, seemed to shift under CEO Mike Duke. It became reportedly obsessed with profit, growth, and dominance. This fixation arguably came at the expense of its original just cause of saving people money so they can live better. This shift ultimately led to scandals, widespread employee protests, and a dilution of the deep brand loyalty it once commanded. The focus changed.
This really underscores the essential need for a chief visionary officer, CVO, in organizations, or at least that mindset at the top. Someone consistently focused on that infinite horizon, working in tandem with CFOs and COOs who manage the finite, near-term numbers. When a company is led solely by those fixated on quarterly results, the true just cause often gets lost in the spreadsheets. This obsession with numbers, as we've seen, can lead to the deterioration of human relationships within the company and a profound loss of trust outside of it. Someone has to keep their eye on the horizon.
But even in an infinite game, rivals can be incredibly important, even necessary. The research we explored introduces a powerful concept: worthy rivals. These are other players who excel at certain things, and their strengths reveal precisely where your own organization can improve. They force you to get better. They don't necessarily have to be morally superior or evil. They're simply good at something that challenges you to lift your own game. Think of Alan Mulally at Ford. When he took over, Ford was in serious trouble, near bankruptcy. He didn't just focus on beating General Motors or Chrysler. He used Toyota, specifically Lexus, with its reputation for quality, as a worthy rival, not to destroy them, but to inspire Ford to dramatically improve its own quality and efficiency.
Mullally's focus was consistently on Henry Ford's original just cause: to provide safe and efficient transportation for everyone. That was the North Star. Toyota was simply a benchmark, a source of data insights on where we could continuously improve our operation. He wasn't celebrating when GM or Chrysler needed bailouts during the 2008 auto industry crisis, even when Ford didn't take the money. His focus was always on the infinite game of serving people with quality transportation, using rivals to get better, not just to win a finite battle against them.
And here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit concerning: the danger of what's called cause blindness. The research warns that believing you are unrivaled, that you have no worthy competitors, leads directly to arrogance, stunts innovation, and drastically reduces flexibility. You get complacent. When the Soviet Union, arguably America's primary worthy rival for decades, collapsed, the U.S. arguably suffered from a period of cause blindness. We acted for years like a sole victor, which sometimes led to imposing our will unchecked, without the same degree of external challenge forcing introspection. Or think about Blockbuster completely ignoring Netflix as a viable threat, or traditional taxi companies suing ride-sharing services like Uber and Lyft instead of adapting their own models to compete effectively. When you fail to identify or respect worthy rivals, you become inflexible and incredibly vulnerable to disruption.
And perhaps most disturbingly, when there's no external worthy rival to focus collective energy on, internal fighting often dramatically increases. It's like the energy has nowhere else to go. The research points out that historically, Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. often put aside their significant differences because the Soviet Union served as a shared external worthy rival, a common threat. Now, with that gone, too often, they seem to see each other as the primary existential threat, severely hindering their ability to cooperate for the nation's benefit. This is a profound insight into how a lack of an external challenge can lead to internal fragmentation, even societal breakdown. We turn on ourselves.
So if your WHY is meant to be durable and enduring, how do you keep it relevant when the world around you is constantly changing? How do you adapt? You need what the research calls existential flexibility. This is the courage, the sheer guts sometimes, to fundamentally change your business model or your products, the what you do, in order to better serve your unchanging, enduring WHY.
Walt Disney perfectly embodies this concept. His fundamental WY was something like, to invite audiences to leave the stresses and strains of life behind and enter into a more idyllic world of his creation. That was his driving force. This deep WHY drove him from creating animated shorts to pioneering full-length feature films like Snow White, a huge risk at the time, and eventually to building Disneyland itself, which was unlike anything before it. He was never afraid to take enormous risks, to liquidate his own assets, or even license his own name, which was highly unusual then, to advance that core cause, even if it meant abandoning existing successful models like just making cartoons. His vision was always bigger than the current medium he was willing to flex.
Contrast that tragic story with Kodak. Here's the shocking part. Kodak actually invented the digital camera way back in 1975. Their engineer, Steve Sasson, built the first one. Their WHY was genuinely about helping people capture and preserve memories. That was their heritage. But they failed to embrace digital photography because it directly challenged their existing, highly profitable business model of selling film and processing chemicals. That was their cash cow. Their enduring WY was effectively brushed to the side by finite thinking, a narrow focus on protecting current profits instead of embracing the future of their own purpose. And that, ultimately, cost them everything. They couldn't make the existential flex. On a much more positive note, consider the bold move by CVS Pharmacy a few years back. They made a truly significant existential flex by deciding to stop selling cigarettes and all tobacco products. This meant losing an estimated $2 billion in revenue annually, a huge number. Why? Because their stated WY is deeply rooted in helping people on their path to better health. Selling cigarettes was fundamentally inconsistent with that. This decision, while financially costly in the short term, dramatically increased their credibility and attracted new partners in the health and wellness space, like Irwin Naturals and New Chapter Vitamins, precisely because it brought their what into perfect alignment with their WHY. That truly takes courage to lead.
Or think of Doug Parker, the CEO who, during his time leading America West Airlines, faced the airline being on the brink of collapse after 9/11. His personal commitment to saving the airline's people, his underlying why was articulated as making his team safe and secure, drove him to fight fiercely for a crucial government loan and orchestrate a series of mergers. He fought not just for a business entity, but for his team's well-being, ultimately achieving his mission when American Airlines became the largest airline in the world, and his original team remained largely safe and employed through the transitions. He made the flex to protect his people. And Facebook, right now, presents a fascinating and ongoing example. Their initial WY was so powerful, to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. Really inspiring. But today, they're constantly embroiled in scandals over data privacy, misinformation, and their impact on mental health and democracy. It raises a crucial question. Will they make an existential flex and pivot their business model to truly reconnect with their original just cause? Or will finite thinking and the relentless pressures of Wall Street ultimately lead them down a similar path to Kodak? It's a critical moment for them, a real test of their flexibility.
The research emphasizes that making these incredibly hard decisions in the infinite game isn't the sole burden of solitary heroic individuals at the top. It's rarely one person. It's truly done by great partnerships, by teams built on deep trust and a common cause where people feel safe enough to be vulnerable with each other.
This means leaders must be willing to be vulnerable and, frankly, show they actually give a shit about their people. It's not about being soft. It's about genuine human care that translates into action and support. If Rick Fox, described as a roughneck supervisor on an oil rig, could learn to tell his team he cared about them and their safety in that tough environment, then any leader in any industry can find a way to express that genuine concern in a way that fits their culture. It's about translating empathy into tangible support, making it real.
And sometimes that courage to lead means learning to give away control, which can be scary for leaders. Captain David Marquet, tasked with commanding the worst-ranked submarine crew in the entire U.S. Navy, the USS Santa Fe, initially thought he could turn it around by simply giving clearer, better orders, micromanage it back to health. But he quickly learned that his junior officers couldn't even execute basic commands because the sub was designed differently than what they were trained on. His orders were useless. He realized that people acting under these conditions could never be expected to do their best work if he just barked orders and they were afraid to speak up. So he flipped his approach entirely. He learned to give away control, fostering a culture where every single person was empowered and expected to take responsibility and make decisions. He pushed authority down. The U.S. Santa Fe went from the worst to the absolute best-rated crew in Navy history simply by enabling, not controlling, trusting his people.
And this is precisely why hiring for culture is so incredibly critical. The advice often given is, hire for culture and you can always teach the skills later. Obviously, skills matter, but the cultural fit is paramount for long-term success. This ensures a deep, fundamental alignment with the organization's just cause, creating a team that inherently believes in what the organization stands for. When people are a good fit for the culture, when their personal WHY aligns with the company's WHY, they don't just work for a paycheck, they thrive and contribute at a far deeper level. They're invested.
This brings us to a broader, perhaps more sobering look at how these principles impact not just individual organizations, but society as a whole. Many researchers argue that modern capitalism itself, particularly since the rise of shareholder supremacy ideology in the late 20th century, has become fundamentally broken in some ways. It has, in many influential circles, prioritized short-term profit and shareholder returns over the well-being of people, communities, and the long-term health of the system itself.
This profound shift, largely influenced by Milton Friedman's influential ideas back in the 1970s, that a corporation's sole social responsibility is to maximize shareholder profit within the rules of the game, led to mass layoffs becoming an accepted, even celebrated strategy to meet arbitrary quarterly projections. Job security evaporated for many. This eroded trust and loyalty between employers and employees, and crucially, incentivized companies to exploit legal and ethical gaps. Think complex tax avoidance schemes like Apple allegedly sidestepping $74 billion in taxes by parking money overseas. Perfectly legal, perhaps, but does it serve a just cause? It has, in essence, arguably created a society that feels no burden for the collective good, reducing the intrinsic human need for cooperation and the release of oxytocin that comes from genuine connection and shared responsibility. When everything becomes about individual gain and quarterly numbers, the collective good and our shared well-being inevitably suffers.
And this breakdown, this shift in focus, has a direct and significant impact on individual well-being. A study from the University of Canberra found something pretty shocking. Having a job you genuinely hate is as bad for your health, or even worse, than being unemployed, leading to higher rates of depression and anxiety.
Yeah, that's a powerful finding. The research we've explored attributes a significant portion of this workplace stress to weak management and leadership, and, critically, a lack of control. The famous Whitehall studies, which tracked British civil servants for decades, found that it's not simply the demands of a job that cause the most stress, but the degree of control workers feel they have over their own work and destiny within the organization. Less control consistently led to more stress and poorer health outcomes. Feeling powerless is toxic. And if that isn't enough to make leaders rethink their approach, consider this poignant finding. A Boston College study found that a parent's mood from work affects a child's well-being more than the actual long hours worked. If you consistently come home unhappy, stressed, and depleted from your work, the message from the research is blunt. For your children's sake, maybe you need to find something that brings you purpose and joy, or find ways to manage that stress better. It impacts the whole family.
And then there's what's been termed the distracted generation, which might apply across age groups now. We're observing a significant rise in dopamine-driven addictions in modern society. For younger generations, it's often social media, that constant craving for instant validation, for faster or now gratification delivered through likes and notifications. For older generations, maybe it was the relentless pursuit of more and bigger house, bigger salary, more stuff.
This constant bombardment of notifications, this instant gratification loop, leads to profound impatience and, ironically, to increased loneliness and isolation despite being constantly connected. We saw research, for instance, a 2013 CDC study revealing a nearly 30% rise in suicide rates among baby boomers, which researchers linked, in part, to feelings of being outside a circle of safety and abandoned, perhaps as traditional support structures weakened. Virtual relationships, like excessive Facebook use, have been directly linked in some studies to increased feelings of depression, as people constantly compare their messy reality to others' carefully curated online highlight reels. These digital interactions simply cannot replace the deep, face-to-face human contact needed for building real trust, belonging, and the crucial release of oxytocin. Think of Alcoholics Anonymous, for instance. It's highlighted as a perfectly formed circle of safety precisely because it offers real, supportive, consistent human connection in a world increasingly starved of it.
So as we bring this all together, what does this truly mean for you, the listener, in your own life, in your own work, wherever you are? The powerful call to action that emerges from all this research is clear. In organizations that lack inspiration, where that circle of safety feels weak or absent, you must become the leader you wish you had. Unquote. Even small, consistent acts of purpose-driven leadership, caring for the person next to you, asking why, speaking up, can create a profound positive ripple effect on those around you. You can build your own small circle.
And never underestimate the power of seeing the direct impact of your work. We looked at Adam Grant's study on university fundraisers who, after simply meeting the scholarship students they had helped for just a few minutes, saw their revenue increase by an astonishing 400%. Seeing the tangible human impact of your efforts provides a level of meaning and motivation that numbers or abstract goals alone simply never can. It connects your what to a human WHY. Ultimately, what all this knowledge distills down to is this: time and genuine effort are the true currencies of value and loyalty, not just money or fleeting gifts or perks. These are the things that build deep, lasting connections, whether it's in business, in leadership, or in your personal life. Investing in people.
So, as we wrap up this truly expansive deep dive, it really comes back to that core, transformative idea. Enduring success, profound impact, and deep personal fulfillment all spring from truly aligning what you do with why you do it. It's about consciously building and maintaining trusting relationships within a powerful circle of safety, and crucially, understanding that you are playing an infinite game with a clear, inspiring, just cause. Leadership, in this context, isn't about winning or achieving short-term goals at all costs. It's about prioritizing people, fostering trust, committing to continuous improvement, and constantly striving towards something far bigger and more enduring than yourself or the next quarterly report.
The profound thought that resonates from this journey, and something to truly reflect on in your own life, maybe driving home or later tonight, is this: our lives are finite, but life is infinite. We are the finite players in the infinite game of life. We come and go, we're born and we die, and life still continues with us or without us. Right. You only get one choice in this infinite game of life. What will you choose? How will you play?